Although the Phoenix Suns were the 2 seed in the West and people talked about the Milwaukee Bucks, it's safe to say that we're all at least a little surprised by this finals matchup. So, in honor of the great season that these two teams are having, let's go through some of the most surprising rosters in recent history to reach the NBA Finals. What up everybody, my name is Stefan and this is Heat Check. Let's get into it. Starting off with the one and only number 8 seed to ever play in the finals, my New York Knicks. Sure, the 1999 season was a lockout shortened one, but still, that doesn't take away the achievement of this group led by Patrick Ewing and the young additions of Allan and Latrell Spewell. In a legendary 1-versus-8 first-round series against their arch-rival and nemesis, the Miami Heat, they knew that it would be tough and they would need to fight hard and dig deep in order to win. In that iconic battle, it all came down to a deciding game and one last shot. Houston curls, floats it up, front rim, backboard, and in, shocking the entire arena as they became the first 8-seeded team to knock out a number 1. Still on a high from that huge win, the Knicks rolled past Atlanta in a second-round sweep to set up a conference final showdown with another famous New York enemy, Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers. This series gave us another unforgettable shot in Game 3. With the Knicks down by 3 and little time left, they gave the ball to Larry Johnson, and the rest is history.
Johnson is fouled and hit!
The crowd exploded as he converted the 4-point play, and the Knicks went up 2-1 in the series, a lead that they wouldn't give up. Ultimately clinching in 6th, the New York Knicks stunned the basketball world as they secured a place in the NBA Finals against Greg Popovich and the San Antonio Spurs. Playing without Patrick Ewing, who got injured in the Pacers series, the Knicks were no match for Duncan and Robinson as the Spurs won their first of 5 championships. Still, this improbable playoff run by the 8-seeded Knicks will live forever in NBA history. Next, we got the 2007 Cleveland Cavaliers, and this collection of players that LeBron James was able to drag all the way to the finals is possibly the best example of his greatness. I mean, look at this image. First of all, ask yourself how many of these guys you recognize, and then out of those, how many do you know just because they played on this roster alongside LeBron? I mean seriously, where did Boobie Gibson play after Cleveland? What happened to Damon Jones? And Drew Gooden? Wow, no disrespect but all credit to James for this one. Anyway, the Cavaliers finished 2nd in the East this season and blew past Washington in the first round, sweeping them in 4 games. In the second, they faced the trio of Jason Kidd, Vince Carter, and Richard Jefferson, but took care of business in 6 games, setting up an anticipated matchup against the 1-seeded Detroit Pistons. And Game 5 of that series will forever be remembered as the moment when LeBron James officially became the king. In a pivotal game with the series tied at 2, LeBron looked like a man possessed in the 4th quarter and overtime, scoring 29 of Cleveland's 30 points in that stretch. Huge shout out to Danielle Marshall for chipping in with 1 made free throw. The Pistons threw every single defender on LeBron, but they all looked helpless and could only witness the historic performance that happened right before their eyes. The Cavs would eventually close it out in Game 6 and move on to the finals, where once again the Spurs were more than happy to face a subpar team that surprisingly found themselves there. And again, despite the sweep, this finals appearance with this roster to me speaks more for the greatness of LeBron than even possibly some of his titles. It's not that the 2011 Dallas Mavericks weren't a good team, but the West was absolutely stacked back then. You had the 61-win Spurs as the number 1 seed, then Kobe and the Lakers looking for the three-peat. The young Thunder still had James Harden and Jeff Green alongside KD and Russ, of course, making them the most dangerous team on the rise. And even the Blazers, who were the first-round opponent for the Mavericks that year. Dallas took care of them in 6, which brought them to the defending champions, the Lakers. In a shocking turn of events, the core of Dirk, J. Kidd, Terry, The Matrix, and Tyson Chandler, among others, absolutely destroyed LA, sweeping them and essentially ending their run as contenders. The Western Conference Finals was probably a bit more competitive than the 4-1 record would suggest, but ultimately the experience that the Mavs had was too much to handle for OKC, despite the youth and athleticism that was on their side. Crowning this unbelievable run for Dallas, and especially for Dirk, was one of the biggest NBA Finals upsets, beating the Miami Heat's Big Three of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, which secured a spot for the big German among the all-time greats to ever play this game. A career that was plagued by shortcomings and disappointments in big and important games suddenly turned into one of the greatest and most heroic title runs by a leading player that this league has ever seen. Which brings us to another champion which everyone ignored until they won. Despite the 58 wins and the second seed that Toronto Raptors secured in 2019, the entire media was focused on Giannis and the Bucks, who were a 60-win team that season, the process in Philadelphia, and especially the Boston Celtics, who were coming off of a conference finals the previous year without the injured Kyrie, and this time they had him on the roster, so the expectations were high. The fact that Kawhi Leonard was managing load throughout the entire season coming off of his injury further increased doubts for this team, and things got even worse in the first game of the playoffs as they lost at home to the 7th-seeded Magic on a game-winning 3 by DJ Augustine. All of a sudden, Kyle Lowry's playoff choking was brought back from the past and things looked awful for Toronto. Luckily, they quickly recovered and regrouped, winning the next 4 straight games to advance to the second round. And you already know what happened there against the 76ers. 7 grueling games of relentless back and forth, ups and downs, a true war against a stacked roster that also had Jimmy Butler back then. And of course, it all came down to this.
By Simmons, is this the dagger?
The exhilaration of this instant classic shot by Leonard did not last long, as the Raptors quickly went down 0-2 against Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they were in jeopardy of falling down to a 3-game hole that no team has ever climbed back from. But Toronto somehow survived the double overtime thriller, and they would once again go on to win 4 straight as if nothing happened, miraculously punching their ticket to the NBA Finals against Golden State. The basketball gods were on their side for one final time, since despite the heroic play by this squad, they absolutely played against a Golden State roster that was decimated by the KD and Klay Thompson injuries. Regardless, the Raptors won their first title with an unbelievable journey to the end. And we had the latest example of a surprise just last season in the bubble. In a season unlike any other, the culture and the discipline of Spoelstra's Miami Heat prevailed. In that chaos, the 5th-seeded Miami swept Indiana and then also destroyed the heavy favorites Milwaukee, led by the MVP Antetokounmpo in 5 games. And in the conference finals, we saw one of the most iconic game-saving blocks by Bam Adebayo in the opening, going chest-to-chest against Jason Tatum and flat-out rejecting him at the rim, essentially winning the game for Miami on the defensive end. Having the control of the series throughout the entire time and going up 3-1, the Heat eventually were able to close it out in 6 games to meet the Lakers in the finals, capping off a wild run in the most bizarre season ever. Although they were no match for LA, the grit and the fight that Miami showed, leaving everything that they had on the floor, legitimized them and their achievement, although it was a surprising one. Getting back to this year to wrap things up, regardless of which team wins it, I'm extremely excited that we get to watch a final series that we didn't anticipate would happen. Hopefully you like this quick reminder of some unexpected finalists. This should keep you warmed up and in rhythm until this year's matchup. That's it for now. Subscribe and talk to you in the next one. Peace out.